Hi, and welcome back to World End Economica, Part 1, right? Yeah, World End Economica, Part 1, or Act 1, I'm not sure which one it is. And this is a visual novel. If you're just joining us now, welcome. But I do have to tell you that if you guys don't want me to narrate, I can do another version where there's no narration. And that's perfectly fine. For now, since it's the only way to really interact with you guys, I guess I'll try my best to narrate and add some little bit of tidbits of interesting science information. Hopefully it works out. I don't know. Let's try it out. I was born and raised in this lunar city, so I was genuine moon scum. I returned to my booth, entered my password, and booted up the tool application on my computer. A welcome screen whose only good point was its friendliness was followed by a merciless and desolate landscape much akin to the surface of the moon. Countless lines of words flickered on the screen. I imagine it's the kind of effect you'd get if you took a picture of the underdeveloped part of the moon's surface with a low-res camera. The screen showed a session of the Lunar Stock Exchange. This was the type of place for moon scum like me to make a living. I'll get rich without needing to break a sweat. I didn't have enough time to earn an honest living. I took a deep breath and went about business. Downward vision for the first fiscal quarter of CK Bio, possibilities of an investigation into Emerald Industries over suspicions of collusion regarding inflation, the board of directors at the Lunar Bank. I can't do that. With one eye on that stream of news, I focused on managing 220 stocks, picking up those with large price fluctuations. For instance, if one stock had moved 10% on the previous day and another stock had moved 1%, there was probably a high chance that the stock that moved 10% could move by 1% today. I would trade it on that notion alone. When he says trading, he means to either buy or sell. Putting into consideration the mood of the market based on the news. Wait, what? We just said that. I would buy stocks with large fluctuations. Within a turbulent up and down movement of the price, I could extract some profit, which is what I occupied myself between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. lunar time. Essentially, what he's doing is buying it when it's at the lowest part, the valley, and then selling it when it's at the peak. Although since we can't really determine the future, we can't really be like, hey, look at this stock that goes up and down, etc., etc. Because we're humans, we can't tell what's going to happen in the future. All we can do is make educated guesses based on what's happening in the present. Between those hours, the only thing that went into my mouth were food that I could eat one-handed and drinks. To be honest, I'd be so engrossed in trading that breaks weren't common. What? Don't you have to use the bathroom? Even if I had the free time to take a break, I'd rather use it to look at my screen, to grasp price fluctuations and do some trades. After all, a difference of a few minutes when making the call to buy or sell could easily mean the difference between gaining or losing 1 or 2%. My war chest is 72,000 moles. Moles, I'm guessing, is a currency. 1% of that came out to 700 moles. A store clerk here, so 1% of his money is 700 moles. That's 1%. A store clerk here that would make 7 moles an hour at best. 7 an hour, so in a 9 to 5 shift, an 8-hour shift, 7, 8. Ah, crap, I am bad at math. Is it 56? I think it's 56. Yeah, it's 56 moles per day. That's not a lot. This was the place where a public school teacher's monthly starting salary was 1,200 moles. So I could make in a few minutes what they'd make in a month. What just happened? Let me do that again. A store clerk here would make 7 moles an hour at best. This is what This was a place where a public school teacher's monthly starting salary was 1,200 moles, so I can make in a few minutes what they'd make in a month. Is there like a... No. Just want to go forward. Of course, over the course of a day's trading, some people would win and others would lose. But I was on the winning streak of all streaks, and before I knew it, my seed money of 1,000 moles had ballooned to 72 times that. The one and only time I did honest, hard labor in my life was to build that seed money. Since then, I've just been building my assets through these trades. While the gains were a little less than what they used to be, the greater your assets grew, the faster they grew, so it didn't worry me. It'd be what they'd call a snowball effect. I've never seen snow before, but with the videos I've seen on Earth... Oh my god, I'm so bad at this. Let's redo this. You want to redo this? I don't think we should redo it. It'd be what they call a snowball effect. I'd never seen snow before, but I'd seen videos of Earth before, and thus I was familiar with it. I feel like that's a run-on sentence. Oh my goodness. I decided that I was gonna make even more money and then live in the center of this lunar city. It's a place where tons of ridiculously smart people were gathered. It's said that 70% of this world's wealth was held by the people there. I lived up there, and then... The back of my head was high on these kinds of delusions as I performed trade after trade like a man possessed. That's why it took me a while to notice. I finally did after I got smacked on the head. Pow! Yo, kid. I turned around to see the clerk from before standing in front of the booth's open door. What, you want money? Since when did this place become prepay? Or what? Was it something else? Was making money not allowed here? What do you want? I'm busy. As I glared at him, the overly skinny, bleary-eyed clerk let out a tired sigh. What? Oh, that's your reply? I came to tell you that the police are on their way to gather up street urchins and... Before the clerk finished his sentence, my PC had been closed and thrown into my bag. Hey, wait! The employee grabbed my shoulder as I tried to push him aside and exit the booth. Though he was thin, he was still muscular, strong enough to remind you that he was an adult. Still, I always kept a set amount of money in my breast pocket for times like these. I grabbed it and thrust it into his hands. Keep the change! I put on my hat, shouldered my bag, and ran down a narrow corridor. Wondering what was going on in the booth, a bunch of guys who looked like they just mumbled useless replies to the police peeked through the cracks from their booths, wondering if someone had been arrested. After sliding past the dirty counter, I made it to the store's even filthier exit. The chip away paint and rust made the already cramped building feel even more claustrophobic. I ran straight down the hallway towards the open air. There were stairs if I had turned left at the end of the hall, but I never had any plans to use them in the first place. Without a moment's hesitation, I kicked off the floor, jumping as high as I could. Passing over the concrete wall, my body flew out over the street. Because the cafe was on the 5th floor of the building, there was a heck of a view below me. I jumped towards the wall of the building opposite me and then kicked off from that wall, aiming back towards the wall of the first building. That's confusing. So I jumped towards the wall of the building opposite me, across the street, and then kicked off from that wall, aiming back towards the wall of the building I was just in. Once the sole of my foot hit a pipe on the wall, I jumped straight up with all of my strength and resolve. Human genes have been fine-tuned for living on Earth for over millions of years. So with some weight training, anyone could perform feats like these on the moon where the gravity was lower. What you couldn't do was allow yourself to miss your daily training. Jumping from wall to wall, I quickly reached the 14th floor of the building next door. I guess my heart rate did go up a bit. I glanced down to see a pair of blue uniformed policemen looking bored as they tapped their batons on their shoulders and climbed the stairs. It seemed that the clerk wasn't playing a prank on me when he gave me that tip. I already paid my thanks to him when I handed him that money though. By now, he should probably have already used a change from it to kick back with a store-bought beer. For a moment, I opened up my bag in the hallway and flipped open my PC screen. I ran off in the middle of a trade so my position hadn't changed. I should be able to get at least a weak wireless connection out here. If I were lucky, prices would have risen and I'd be home free. But usually, at times like this, figures. After hanging my head in disappointment, I closed out my losing positions and called it a day. Nothing good comes from wandering around downtown in the middle of the day. After jumping from one building to the next, I decided to walk down a deserted hallway towards my favorite Chinese restaurant. It was a time of day when most people my age would be at school, so walking around carelessly would get you chased down by the cops before you knew it. Until you turned 18, the legal age here, it was mandatory that you belonged to some sort of educational institution. Some people would say this was a good thing, while others grumbled something about government-funded programs. I fell into neither camp. My way of dealing with systems I didn't like was to quietly escape them, not to loudly criticize them. I can't English. On that note, this area with all of its complicated passages and extreme elevation changes, it's not odd to see the 7th floor of one building be next to the basement of another, which was convenient for people like me. Not to mention the overgrown vegetation here and there that acted as good cover. These plants weren't originally included in the city's plans, but had leaked out of one of many lunar laboratories where they were messing with their genes. Supposedly, genes had tons of factors that express themselves differently depending on the environment, so a lot of plants and animals started acting strangely as soon as they were brought to the moon. There were even people saying that life forms on Earth could have originated from outer space and brought to Earth via the moon. Some of these plants grew so well on the moon's inorganic matter that you might wonder if they've been around here for 1,000,000 years. Of course, it wasn't as if these plants were free from laws of physics. Nitrogen and other nutrients for them were often brought over from Earth. So I hadn't heard about any worries that the surface of the moon would be taken over by the greenery. This applied to more than just plants though. As for the humans here, it didn't matter how many ultra-elite think tanks came to energize the lunar economy and its industries. Life here just wasn't sustainable without sending a lot of things over from Earth. According to the government statements, even if the orbital elevator were to stop moving today, there was currently enough biomass here to create an enclosed, recycling-based environment. In other words, we'd be able to eat food, crap it out, then use that crap to grow more food to eat, and so on. They'd be able to make a ton of electricity with solar panels while collecting direct sunlight to use as a super hot source of heat. So, maybe they're right. I mean, people even say that Earth was in more danger environmentally since they're still relying on oil and nuclear power. I didn't know who was right. Whatever the case, I had dreams. And if it meant making my dreams come true, I didn't care if I was on the Earth or on the moon. After all, my dream was to stand at the forefront of humanity. It'd be a place where you could only look forward and live by advancing onward. Who cared about what happened to the world behind you? And if I couldn't make this dream come true, then there'd be no reason for me to live. That was why, to put it logically, I never worried a single bit about the moon's environment or whatever. What I worried about was how much money I made and how fast I reached my goals. While I was thinking about these things, I passed through the thickly vegetated tunnels towards the high ground. It was a clear day as it always was, on the other side of a translucent membrane, the visible half of the mist-covered earth looking small. The sky over the lunar city was wrapped in a see-through dome, and right behind it was outer space. Gravity was weak on the moon, so you couldn't naturally keep large amounts of gas stored up on the surface. Okay, you see, since the moon is like a certain size, like Earth was really lucky. It's between the sizes of a small planet and a giant planet, a gas giant. So what Earth was able to do was find an equilibrium for the size as well as being around a certain ring, which allowed for life to grow. The moon can't do that. The moon is too small. And since the moon is small, gases such as oxygen, the gas that we need to breathe, would just escape into space and never to be seen again. So what they had to do here was put a giant dome around the moon where they live in and pretend that it's a sky. While apparently each 24-hour day on Earth had a morning, afternoon, and night, which was followed the next day by another morning, the moon alternated between only 2 weekdays and 2 weeknights. However, the human body cycle was set differently thanks to tens of thousands of years of living on Earth. Because most of the people living on the moon were immigrants from Earth, its dome was adjusted to give off light in an Earth-like way. It even had sprinklers attached to it so that it would rain. However, I'd only seen things like downpours and thunderstorms in videos. When it rained here, it was always just a drizzle. Strong winds never blew here. The only winds felt here were the slow coiling movements of the atmosphere due to the centrifugal and Coriolis forces, as well as the gentle breeze of the air inside the dome being mechanically circulated. If anyone has ever wondered where wind comes from, the wind, it comes from the rotation of the Earth. And if what they mention here is Coriolis forces, I think I'll be able to show you an image, but the Coriolis force is like, for the Western Hemisphere, I guess the Northern Hemisphere, the winds go from northwest to southeast, I think, while the winds from below the equator for our, latitude and longitude is from southeast to northwest. So the winds sort of like blow in opposite directions and go along the equator. So yeah, that's where wind comes from. Science! I strayed from the street onto a grass-covered cliff and jumped upward with a grunt. I kicked off a tree branch and rotated my body to land on the top of the tunnel. This was a box seat where you could look down on the greater part of the city. I grabbed some beef jerky out of my bag and bit into it. According to the guys who came from Earth, this wasn't at all close to the real thing, but it's the only beef jerky I knew. There were a number of cities on the moon. The one I lived in was the very first city to be created, and I could get a clear view of the whole thing from here. The spot in front of me where pointed skyscrapers sprung upward one after the other was called Newton City. It wasn't like entry here was regulated. However, it did have the feeling of a special zone where only certain people could enter. Since it was full of giant corporate buildings, even public places like shopping malls and parks were overrun with police and city regulations. Most of the wealth here was created in Newton City, and you could find famous tycoons with assets over 10 billion mules all over the place. If you had that much wealth, you'd undoubtedly be able to be on the forefront when humanity took its next step. Well, in America, it's sort of going backwards. Like Donald Trump, I'm pretty sure he's absolutely rich, but no. If he stood at the forefront of humanity, humanity is doomed, right? Money could make just about any desire you might have in this world come true. In this world, money ruled all. Like a photograph of the moment a drop of liquid hit a pool of water, a group of skyscrapers stood in the dead center of Newton City, while the buildings around that area were suddenly much shorter. That area was where middle-class people who worked in Newton City lived in what was called the Green City or the White Belt. It was a place full of people who loved words like high society and refinement, the kind of people who claimed to care about grace and harmony, but really full of nothing but pride and obsessions with upward mobility. Whenever I went there, I felt sick seeing the sterilized rows of small, nicely manicured lawns and white-walled buildings. There wasn't a single piece of garbage on the streets, and the only plants around were domesticated trees on the roadside. After that, the buildings in the area around Green City got taller again, but it was a complete jumble. There, power lines dangled messily onto the streets, and vulgar neon signs lit the area, painting the whole place with the feel of squalor. Neon signs, huh? The red light district? Eh? Eh? The area was called the outer sections, and while technically they'd all been numbered from 1 to 8, there was no real point. If you consider Newton City the center of everything, the north was full of factories. There you could find silicon dioxide dissolution factories, fertilizer synthesis factories, automated plantations, and so on. On the east side was the village where I lived. That area was notorious for its hard-nosed residents. You could also find settlements of old-timers whom you might call artisans in the area, which made for a countless number of small workshops. Most people didn't have the luxury of being able to do something like transport wooden furniture via orbital elevator, and land was expensive on the moon, so the houses of Green City were small. As a result, handmade furniture created with the size and shape of your house in mind was far more popular than ready-made furniture. I was told that my parents were aiming to live together with plants brought from Earth in exchange for making furniture out of wood. Even though the factories existed that used the best scientific advances to maximize harvest rates as much as physically possible, they still grew plants by hand for some reason. They seemed to at least have their customers, but I didn't see a single enjoyable thing about being covered in dirt. I'm a pretty boy. Yeah. Oh my god. It just made me wonder why they even came to the moon in the first place. There wasn't a place for stuff like that. Dude, I'm pretty sure, like every other immigrant family, the first generation immigrants, I'm pretty sure they came to this entire new place so that you could have a proper education and live a good life. Okay? Don't be a brat. Okay, back to character. The moon was supposed to be a place where you directed your gaze to the top of the inorganic buildings that line Newton City. And if I shifted my eyes to the left, I saw an area by those who couldn't keep up that struggle. Here, when buildings started rusting, no one would bother to repaint them. It had been nicknamed the Red Valley. The reason it was called a valley was because when Newton City was originally built on a flat crater floor, all the low-income earners made the Rocky Mountains surrounding the city their home. And by Rocky Mountains, I don't mean something like the harsh mountainous environments you might find on Earth. It was actually something closer to what you might call the highlands. As a result, the rock was chipped away to increase surface area like a river eroding hills, and many structures could be built in a tight area by terracing the slopes. Furthermore, more space was secured by digging caves into the rocky stretches. It was clearly evident that doing this over and over made for a mess of a city. Not much more than a decade had passed since the city's establishment, and it already become such a devilish haunt that you wouldn't blame the local government if they just threw up their hands and gave up. As for me, I liked the Red Valley with its level of squalor. While it was true that the people living here could be called outcasts and failures, the place was irresponsible in a good way and put me at ease. Of course, I had no intentions of becoming the 20% that lived there. And finally, the area around where I was right now was called a 6th outer section. It was not as degenerate as the Red Valley, but it was not quite as productive as the east side of town. The area didn't have a nickname yet, and its lackadaisical aspects oozed out at every turn. While the buildings were dirty and worn out, it was dotted with small companies who dreamed of Newton City and the occasional decent-looking house. So it wasn't the worst place to live. I stood up, hopped back down to the street, and jogged off. The road was paved with neatly limestone rocks. It was chipped and cracked here and there, but no one ever tried to patch it. The rough dirt of the moon had piled up in its recesses. Waterways were occasionally visible, and in them you could actually see clear running water as well as fish swimming. While hydrogen was available on the moon, there was no water. So once hydrogen had been synthesized into water, it was made sure that every drop remained circulating within the dome. The waterway's final destination was a giant water processing plant under Newton City. In other words, everything was designed to gather in the center of the motor-shaped city, whether it's people, water, or wealth. From there, everything was disseminated outward. After crossing the intricate waterways and bridges, I passed through a narrow alley and reached my destination. It was called the Lunar Chinese Restaurant. Okay, I think that's it for the entire backstory. No more backstory. Oh, please, I hope I introduce new characters, and I hope everything works out. I'm going to put a save right here just in case. Okay, so I know that this is not like the most intensely interesting thing for gaming. Visual novels are known to be slow and hard to get through, but I've always wanted to play this visual novel because it also will seem to be slightly educational too, because I am interested in learning about, sci-fi, science, and the stock exchange what they're hinting at. I really hope there's actual gameplay regarding that, because that would be really cool. Something like what GTA 5 did. GTA 5's stock system sort of became a joke though after a while, so I'm a little disappointed about that. But it's okay. It's alright. Anyway, so that's that's episode 2 of World End Economica, Act 1. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more, although this video is it's like for a niche audience, but I hope that you guys can get excited about this as much as I do. It's just something that I always wanted to do, Anyway, so I will probably post another episode soon, and please like and subscribe if you did watch this and enjoy it. My voice, I know my voice is not like the best voice to listen to. Like, it's so mellow. I have a slight accent, and I have a lisp sometimes. A lisp. A lisp. But I'm trying to get better at being vocally, outward out there. Because last time it was a mistake for me to not do that. So, anyway, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions about the sciencey stuff, or if you just want to talk about science in general, just leave a comment down below, and I promise I will get to you, okay? Alright. I'll see you guys next time, alright? Alright. Bye!